welcome in, and welcome back to another edition of Edition. We say it different every day. um, oh Lord, but welcome to another edition of Scattered Thoughts, where me, Sky, give you. No, and I don't know. We were just going with whatever time I'm out. But either way, we give you some scattered thoughts, either from conversations from live streams. Yes, you can find us live streaming on YouTube primarily, but also sometimes on Twitch, or just notes I have while we're gaming. Again, just to kind of test the waters of where we are socially in the community, and get some insight from folks. And so, I feel like I'm missing something, but let's go ahead and just jump in. So today, hopefully, I say it's like almost every time. It's like hopefully it's going to be a shorter one. But I actually do think it's going to be a little bit shorter one because it's more like based on a question more than like deep like thoughts about it. Um, but genuinely, when I say this, I am actually looking for like folks' feedback. Genuinely looking for folks' feedback as it pertains to competition in the game, true competition in the game. We are currently in week what? Two? Yeah, we're in week two. LOL, time flies, but we're in week two of Guardian Games. That means we have 1 week left. And so, if anyone remembers from the past three, I think all 3 years previously for Guardian Games, um, I don't know if y'all can hear my cat in the background. Hopefully not. But what was I saying? Oh yes, for the past 3 years, we've had competitive strike scoring or nightfall scoring, right? Where you go into the nightfall, the Guardian game specific nightfall for the week. Each week it changes, and then you would compete to have the highest score. Whoever got into the top 10% each week would then be eligible for an emblem. So we had that going on. We've had competitive strikes going on, and again, we're not doing it this year. Again, let me reframe. So the competitive scoring is still there. So when you're doing the scoring, either for supremacy or for the Guardian Games Nightfall, you still get a score, and you can see what percentage is like. Right now, I think I am top 10% for supremacy. I have to go back and check that. It's always changing, but I'm like top 10 or 20% for supremacy because supremacy is really fun. I play a lot of it. And then for the nightfall scoring, I think I'm like top 60% or whatever. So you're still able to see it when you check your quest log. You're still able to see what percentage you're in. But this year there's no additional new emblem or anything like that. It's just, you just play the play. And it's interesting to me that they being Bungie chose to go this route, because I actually think this year could have been a really great opportunity. I was gonna say actually, but I really feel like this year could have been a really great opportunity for Bungie to actually like double down, and figure out a way to make comp actually like interesting, actually engaging, actually something that folks would want to contribute their time and energy to. Namely, for the fact that like there are very few places in the game. Again, I really don't want to come at this from like a um, I don't even want to say elitist. 'Cause I don't think it's elitist, but I do think there should be boundaries, or there should be places rather in the community where you're able to test your skill at a higher difficulty, or just within like a competitive setting, a pure competitive setting that allows for people to like test their skills. Again, also like competitive can be fun. I don't consider myself like a super competitive person, but like you get me in like a friendly competition, like a genuine competition where like it's everything's fair and it's just about whose skill matches up to the other person's skill and where you land. I'll, every time I'll be down for it, even for PvP. Like I don't hate PvP. Again, I go to Warzone. I'll go to Apex. I'll go to these other places where I'm trying to categorize it in a healthy way. But again, I know those systems have their issues as well. But when I'm playing those games, or even recently had the opportunity to play the closed beta for a game called X Defiant from Ubisoft, I felt like I was having fun because I was having fun, so I didn't feel that. But I felt like the games were engaging because I was playing people around my relative skill level. Were there games, or are there games, when I play Warzone where it's just like, oh, I'm just clearly just being, destroyed by pro. So yeah, sure, it happens. But the majority of the time, I'd say like 85% of the time, I'm playing games with people who are around my skill level. And when they're around my skill level, and there's a point to this. It feels engaging because I actually have an opportunity to some extent to actually push myself, be as precise as I can, like hit all my P's and Q's, and like actually get into like a really engaging game. Because again, if you're stomping the other team, really not engaging. If you're getting stomped by another team, it's really not engaging. And so I think about those experiences, right? And I'm trying to pull a couple threads together, but I think about those experiences where you're in a competitive environment. Why don't we call it that, a comparative environment, and you have the opportunity to, excuse me, you have the opportunity to, uh, I don't even know what the word I'm trying to find, but I feel like folks can kind of get where I'm going at. It's like you have the opportunity to actually fight for something, in terms of a game. You're fighting for, an actual opportunity to beat the other team. If I'm in a game and I'm getting sniped, like even like recently in trials, it was Cloud Strike City. Well, I can't remember the map right now, but it was just like it's not fun. Where like people are just cheesing Cloud Strikes. You're getting killed off spawn. Like just people who you clearly should not be playing with, and you still get end up matched with them and playing with them. And it's just like this is not fun. This is not a test of my skill. Yes, it's trials end game, but it doesn't feel like it's actually competitive because I'm not playing people who are even remotely near my skill. It's always a gap. Either we're getting stomped by like people who literally should be in some type of like pro league, or like we're stomping another team. And it's just like, where's the middle ground? Where's the opportunity to actually like get better, show off my skill, like improve by like having people who are around my skill. And within that, winning games, learning more about my play style, figuring out how to tighten up my skill sets. And then when it's time, play people that are better than me and figure out like how can we overcome, like and get into a space where um you continue to grow, you don't plateau and things like that. And so I think a lot of my concern is that like we're losing spaces in the Destiny 2 space. I know I was talking about other games as well, but I feel like Destiny 2 specifically, I feel like we're losing spaces to actually be competitive. And it kind of, I felt it. And again, this is like the tying in point. I felt it because like, as you know, we're in week 2 now of Guardian games. When we're in week 1, I was just like, oh dang! I wish I wish this could have actually been competitive. I wish there was an opportunity for us to actually like be in a space where like we could fight off and say who actually truly has the highest Nightfall competitive scoring. But we can't. Why? Because cheesing the game is cheesing, and also in some cases just downright exploiting the game are embedded in the culture of the community. And regardless of how embedded it is in the culture of the community, Bungie just continuously seems to not care about actually correcting it. It'll be one thing if, excuse me, sorry about that. It'd be one thing if Bungie was like, oh, you know what? We see that people are like doing these cheeses, people are doing out of bounds, like people are doing all these types of things to like get super high scores that normally wouldn't be possible in competitive scoring. Why don't we actually patch it? Or why don't we address it? Or why don't we, you know, I know famously last year it was the revive cheese, right? Where people, it was a light blade, which was a nightfall. I remember distinctly. That week was ridiculous, and I think I talked about this in a previous edition of Scattered Thoughts. But again, for those who didn't watch, it was the one about fixing Guardian games, I believe it's called. But essentially, long story short, it was you were just in a space where like people were sitting at the beginning of the strike, killing each other. One person obviously staying alive. You res them, and that was like the majority of your points. You just sat there for a good majority of the strike, cheese the res farm, got those points, and then what you're able to do is then just speed run the rest of the nightfall, and you still would get these ridiculously high scores. And even if you didn't get the high scores you wanted, you could always just like die in the boss room, which was like fairly easy, and die in a way where you had someone who was like an invis hunter, or like a bubble titan, and you'd still be able to like farm res to a degree. Anyways, so the fact being that like it never was about truly like you hop in the game, you proceed forward, no cheeses, and do the best you can, and try and optimize in a way that's going to allow you to get a high score. It wasn't about that. And for me, it's just like I feel like I personally, maybe if nobody else was, I was missing that this year. I was like, oh, this is kind of sad that we don't have competitive scoring. We don't have the opportunity to actually like test our skill because ultimately, for whatever reason, I mean, from Bungie's perspective, I can see that like it's easier to just not have people like concerned over an emblem, and it's not as serious. Which again, I think there's a lot of benefits for Guardian Games not being as serious this year, but also as someone who loves the game, wants to have a fair competitive environment, wants to be able to improve and like actually like show off that like my skills are getting better over time. It just sucks that like we're in a space where less and less so. I just don't know where those competitive spaces are. If there are competitive spaces in the game that I'm just not thinking about or just not keeping in again. So let me clarify: fair competitive spaces. So I want someone to. It's like, but what about comp or what? I don't know. I'm talking about fair, like time over time, even to this day, with even some of the additional changes, people have talked about how comp still doesn't feel like a rewarding experience. It doesn't feel like it's actually something that's helping people improve. Um, where are you actually getting competitive in game? Like it's not like people are competing for Grandmaster Nightfall scores. For me, I think there's actually a high value in being able to have a competitive environment that's fair. But if we're going to continue to be in space where I don't know. We get competitive spaces like we did last year, um, with people can exploit, people can cheese it, and then Bungie's not going to say anything. Then I don't know. In my opinion, just keep it. Just keep it. I don't want it. Um, because what I want is the ability to have all types sides of the game, right? I want to be able to be in a space where like, yeah, like super casual. We can play with anyone. Again, we do helps on my stream. So whether you're high skill or whether you're a new player, just having space for us to game, have a good time. I want those spaces, right? And I think a good majority of the game can benefit from being those spaces, which I think it is, right? I think the majority of the game is casual, and there's opportunity to do in game, obviously, because there's in-game materials, but you build your way up to having the skill set to play at that. But also, I think beyond in-game, having something that's truly competitive, because Trials, honestly, my opinion, I'll say it, Trials isn't competitive from the perspective, from to hear me out, don't twist my words, from the perspective of just like, if we could do Trials and it was all gunplay, it wasn't ability spam, it wasn't Cloud Strike spam, it wasn't Le Monarch spam, I think then we could, and you were getting paired up with people who were actually around your skill. I think like, yeah, like then we could call it competitive, or the framing of competitive that I'm saying right now. But right now, where in the game are we getting that competitive aspect? Where are we getting something where there's a fair opportunity for folks to not only be tested in their skills, but actually like have an opportunity, like there's a fair chance that you can win the fight. If there's a 70-30 chance that I'm not gonna win in this fight because of matchmaking, because of connections, because of whatever, right? I don't think that's creating a fair competitive environment. Again, you hear me say I'm not saying fair based on skill. Skill is something you work at. Skill is something you have to practice. But for me, I think I'm feeling it now more than recently. That like it just doesn't feel the same. If I wanted something competitive, again, I really think about the X Defiant closed beta. It was just, oh my god, I was just like, I actually really like PvP, right? Like, yeah. Hashtag self promo. It was just a. I think I put a couple clips up on my Twitter, but it was just I felt like I wasn't. I don't feel like there was ever a time where like I was even in ranked play, I was having fun in ranked. And I don't think I can say that for any game, FPS game rather. And so like, I guess maybe that's like kind of where the part of the question is coming from, part of where like my desire for this is from is like, I've proved that there's the opportunity when space is created in the right way that you can actually like have a fair competition. And I'm just wondering if that will ever be a part of Bungie's goals. Honestly, if it's not a part of Bungie's goals, like again, we can't force Bungie to do anything. I mean, even now we can't force Bungie to do anything, but um yeah, I just want to be able to have some type of competitive space, and more and more, I just feel like Bungie, not even necessarily Bungie, but I just feel like Destiny isn't the space. And again, Bungie's working on their first person shooter game. I think what is it called, Matter? You know, they're working on other IPs. Maybe that's where they're gonna put more of this kind of competitive environment that I'm looking forward to. But yeah, I and maybe naively so, yeah, I've been holding on to this dream that we can have a fair competitive environment in Destiny 2, and it feels like yeah, it just feels like that day's never coming. So that's my thoughts on it. I'm curious what other folks think. Are you actually seeing like a competitive space within Destiny 2, like something you would consider competitive? You know, for folks who were around for last year, again 2022 specifically, guarding games, did you like how they did competitive scoring back then, things like that? Whereas it's like, where do you see the opportunity to actually be in a space where um, we can we can play the game. We can play casual, we can play in game, and then there's also something like post in game, I guess maybe, where you can actually like, okay, here's my skill set. Let me put it to the test. And again, I think it doesn't have to be a PvP thing. I think it could be PvP and PvE, where you can put it to the test and say, you know what, here are my skills, here's what I've done, and here's how I've improved, because I can check and say that like in a truly fair competitive space, again, not fair based on skills, fair based on boundaries and parameters, that like you're not just going to be able to cheese a nightfall, you're not just going to be able to ability spam. um you know, like honestly, like what would a PvP like mode look like where you can't use abilities? Maybe like you can like be building towards your super, but it's all gunplay. It's gunplay and supers. And obviously you have the cooldown for supers. And so like you have to kill people with the guns. You can't kill people with, you know, like trip line spam. Things like that. And so I don't know, maybe it's a pipe dream. Is that the phrase? I think that's the phrase, whatever. Um yeah, maybe it's something that's literally just never gonna happen, and you know, and you know, it is what it is. There's other games, you know, I play other games, but yeah, here's the hoping. So let me know what y'all think. Maybe this is just so really wild. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, would love to hear your thoughts, and yeah, let's keep the conversation going. All right, peace.